Hey, everyone. My name is Brittany Lewis. I am a professional artist, graphic designer, and tarot deck enthusiast. Hey, hey, PL. Today is the day. Sunday is the day that I spend time working on my dream project, the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. And today we're picking back up with the Three of Cups from the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So from last week, we worked on our grandmother figure. Is she is in yellow, and so since then, what I have done is spent a little bit of time working on her outfit, fleshing her out, bringing elements in from the Queen of Wands, and yeah, just continuing the thing. I did add a little bit of atmosphere, so today we're just going to pick back up to. We are actually going to start working on a new character. I do believe I want to work on the sister figure, which is in red. So I'll show you again what that process is like. What I will do is follow very much the same regimen that we had from the grandmother figure. So I'll zoom in here so you guys can see what we've done. Now, what I did with her, and in addition to finishing up her skin and finishing up her costume, was that I actually brought in elements from the Queen of Wands, and I'll give you an idea of what that looks like. This is my Queen of Wands illustration, and I finished this in 2021. So, because I would like to create continuity throughout this project as I go, I do tend to pull elements from illustrations that I've already done. So, what I did was grab the necklace from the Queen of Wands and also the background because I really liked the way that the sky was done and I wanted to add just a little bit of atmosphere to our Three of Cups. So today again, we're just gonna pick back up with it. I'm gonna close this out just so that we don't have too much RAM taken up from the file because this is a huge file. But we will continue to use the Queen of Wands as a reference along with some of the other references that we've gathered over the last couple of weeks. But I did grab her necklace right here. I did reinsert it into our new picture. And again, I did borrow the background because I liked it. There was no real need for me to redraw the background. Hey, Draw Sketchbook, happy to have you here. I'm so glad whether you're watching this live or the replay. I really appreciate each and every one of you for being here. It makes my day. This week has been a little hectic. I didn't necessarily announce it on social media, so I'm really happy to have you guys step in and check in. So if I miss you in the chat, if you're watching, want to say hey, feel free to do that. If you guys have any questions about the process, feel free to ask. I love chatting with you all. I don't have anything specific that I want to talk about this week. I actually just walked in my house about 5 minutes ago because I was out and about running some errands really quickly. So we're just gonna play it by ear. We're gonna have a good time today, as always. So yeah, so here we are. So now I'm gonna turn on the sketch, just turn it up a little bit so we can be reminded of what the sort of blueprint for this piece is looking like. Again, for you guys who are just joining us, this is your first time catching the Three of Cups. This is a coming of age story that we're creating where our main character, who is in the green dress, the little girl in the green, is sort of being welcomed into this sacred society of women. She's joined by her grandmother, her mother, and her big sister. So we're leaning into the mother, the maiden, and the crone. And then we're going to have her become our light source. So our young woman in the green dress is going to glow. I kind of want to channel the last dragon. Show enough, you know how his hand kind of glows red. I do want to do something along those lines. Why? I don't know. It's talking to me. I don't know if it's going to work or not, which is usually how this goes. I don't know if anything's going to work, right? But I do like to challenge myself to experiment a little bit with the art that we create. And so we're just going to pick up. So I did darken or sort of make my sketch a little bit darker so we can kind of see what we have. And we're going to begin working on the sister character. Now she is going to be representing our maiden, right? So her grandmother is the crone, her mother is the mother, and of course the big sister is the maiden. Now with this, I do want to play a little bit with the light. So it probably would be best for me to work on the central character, but we're just going to jump around, right? I'm going to do the skin for the sister character. But what I'm going to be determining in this picture is how close or far away the sister is to the main character, right? And the reason that's important is because we're going to have our little girl glow. And so because of that, the light is going to hit her mother and her sister a little bit differently. Okay. So we're just going to keep that in mind as we go. If we make it to her close today, we'll sort of take that into consideration. One of the things that I have noticed in this, just sort of looking back at it over the last couple of weeks, is that our clothes, the red that she's wearing, is quite close to her skin tone. So we're going to Change that up first. We're going to, I just selected the layer labeled Maiden Clothes. I'm going to go up to my edit menu and tonal correction, and I'm going to go to hue and saturation. You guys will see me use this menu quite a bit in Clip Studio Paint. That is the program that I am using. I do like to use this because it is an easy way for me to change sort of the value of different colors. So I want this to be a little more pink, I guess, a little less close to her, a little more magenta. That's the word that I'm going for. So I want it to be just a little bit more magenta than red because her skin has sort of a red undertone, and we do want it to stand out and differentiate itself from her skin, just so it doesn't blend in too much. With the grandmother, it was real easy because she's wearing yellow, although her skin tone has the same sort of red undertone. Want to kind of pay attention to that. And just like we did with her dress, we're going to do her sort of her like flounce exactly the same way. We're going to, if I can find it, there it is. We're going to change the tone of it, and then we'll kind of experiment and piddle around and see where we go from here. But our main focus today is going to be getting her skin color in, and then we'll sort of move around from there. So I hope you guys had a great week this week. Again, this today I am sort of jumping right into the live stream. I had to hurry up and get everything started because I didn't want you guys to be waiting over too long. But we're going to jump in. Okay, so the first thing that I like to do when I am coloring a character is to, first of all, let's clean her up some because we have a little bit of extra. When we're laying our flats, I wasn't being super precious about where I put color. So I do want to take my eraser tool. I can also do this with the lasso, and I'll do this with the paintbrush as well. But I'll just sort of clean up some of the shapes. That's where, darkening our sketch helps out a whole lot. So I don't want to do too much. I just want to sort of smoothen things out, because what will happen is I will go ahead once we start to paint and add detail to her face is I will actually select the outline of her skin. And as I'm doing that, it'll allow me to paint only on her skin. So for the moment, what I'm going to do is actually turn off my sketch and see where there may be some like wonky or crooked lines, such as here in her arm, right? So we're just going to smoothen that out and darken it up a bit. Same here with her shoulder. We just want to fill in any and all gaps that we see in her skin, and then that'll make it a whole heck of a lot easier for us to add details and things like that. So for my fellow artists, I have an idea. I would love to have you guys, I know you guys maybe have seen like the draw this in your style sort of videos. I kind of want to do that, but I want to do it with the different cards, right? So as I create a card, I'd love to see what you come up with for certain cards. So if there's something you'd be interested in, let me know. I sort of want to lean into the art community a little bit more, because I know that we have a lot of artists who watch this stream and who are also very interested in this particular project. And I would love for you guys to participate in some way. So if there's something that you would like to do, maybe we can develop a card together. I can show you what I would do, as my idea, and you guys can show me what your idea would be. I think that might be all right. But you'll let me know, hopefully, what you guys are thinking about that. But yeah, well, I'm really excited again to have this project underway. I have worked on this just a little bit this week. Not a whole lot. I've been trying to take it easy for the most part, because I tend to tend to do quite a lot in my day to day. So this week has been a pretty easy week for me. But I am happy to be here to work on the Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So for those of you who may not know the backstory of this deck was started in 2019. So this was dream project, something I wanted to do for many years. Was super scared to do it because I was thinking that, I was afraid of what the audience that I already curated up to that point would think. And I think that that's a natural response to doing anything new, maybe something that you hadn't seen before. That was certainly how I was feeling about it. I wasn't real sure how it would go over, but I just sort of did it really to conquer the fear, to get past that point in my life, and to do it because everything was sort of pointing me in the direction of making sure that I get this particular project done. All right, so I'm laying in shadows, and again, I want to keep in mind that my little sister, who is kneeling, is going to be the light source, right? So she'll glow a bit, and as she glows, I need to pay attention to where that light may hit her, right? So just to sort of help me out, I know that she's going to glow, so the light is going to hit her here, right? And let me go a little bit darker so that we can see it. Yeah, the light's going to hit her here. So a lot of this will be in light. Let's go up so we can go up a couple layers. So light will sort of hit her something like this, right? So everything on the left side of this line is going to be lit, and then everything on the right side is going to be in shadow in a bit. Of course, she's going to have shadow sort of underneath her chest, under her blouse, in certain areas where the sort of cloth creates a shadow. But I do want to keep in mind where the little girl is going to shine on my character. And that's going to help me out a ton when it comes to establishing where the shadow should go. Because as I was doing her arm, I was thinking, well, if the light sort of goes here, it may hit her here. And this part may actually be in light, but this part may be in shadow, right? All right, so I'm establishing that. I'm actually going to keep those guidelines there, minus the last one. And then I'm going to go back to my maiden skin, select it, and then we'll sort of course correct a little bit now that I know where I want my shadows to go, where I want my light and my shadows and things like that to go. So we'll do it like so. Reselect this color. And that way, we know that our shadows are going to hit, or the light is going to hit us in a certain way, so that we can emphasize the fact that the little girl is a light source, right? But we still want to add shadow to our form, even though there are going to be areas that are going to be lit. We're doing this because we're going to create the illusion that these are three-dimensional aspects, right? So that her arm has roundness to it, right? Her legs have roundness to it. Her chest and her face and things like that, there are shadows that are created. So we're just going to take all of this into consideration as we make our way around this figure. Now, because the shadow or the light is sort of hitting her underneath, she's actually going to have a light that's going to hit underneath her nose, right? So I don't necessarily want to place my shadow under her nose like I did with the grandmother, because she's a lot closer to the figure, but we will place it somewhat above, and then we'll have light here. And then we may have a little bit of a shadow here. And so we just want to play around with figuring out where we want this glow from our little sister to land, right? And all I did was I selected my skin color, and I took in my color panel, which is going to be where it says restream. I just sort of move and play around with the value lever, which is the bottom most lever. That way the tone stays the same, but the lightness and darkness changes, right? And I'm going to hit Alt just to select that same color again. And one of the things that I really like about this particular brush is that it has soft enough edges that I get nice in between colors. So maybe if I don't want I don't want it to be as dark, right? I would just pick up one of those in between colors and then go from there. So I like how that looks. I like how we have just a bit of form here. Now from here, all I'm going to do is select the same base tone skin color, and I'm going to move my value layer up, right? And we may even adjust the redness or the level of yellow, because the red of her skin tone is closer to a yellow than it is to a pink. And then we'll add highlight, right? So wherever we want this sort of light to hit is where we're going to add our highlights. And then we'll also have some in-between tones that we can use here to sort of help us establish that she's glowing a bit, right? Like so. Yep. So I have super excited. The more that I work on this every Sunday, the more motivated I guess I am to see it to completion. Having a project that I worked on now for what'll be 6 years in November. It's definitely been a test of resilience, I would say, right? Definitely a labor of love. I was actually watching recently a documentary on Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And in that documentary, they talked a little bit about the animator, the head animator for that movie, and how he had spent like 3 decades working on his dream project. You know what I mean? And how that turned out for him. Some of it was due to his own sort of self sabotage, but at the same time, it takes a lot of dedication to spend 20. I think it was like 28 years or so working on the dream project. So, however long it takes, we gonna get it done. We'll see it through to the end. Let's see. I do want to add a little bit of eyebrow here, and I'm just hitting the bracket key. One of these days, I'll figure out if I can get sort of the thing to show up so you guys can see what it is that I'm hitting. That's too dark. The keys that I'm hitting. So if you are painting along or you're following along in Clip Studio, wanting to learn Clip Studio, then you'll kind of have an idea of the buttons that I use. But I'll try to talk you guys through it. And just in case I did not mention, I am working in Clip Studio Paint today. That is my graphic design. That is my illustration project program of choice. It is one that I enjoy. It has a lot of features, including the ability to do animation. And one thing we were talking about recently was the difference between your Clip Studio, your Illustrator, Adobe Illustrator, as well as Procreate and Photoshop. Because I know that there were a lot of artists who were trying to decide whether to go between Clip Studio, I think it was Procreate or Illustrator, because those are vastly different programs. Illustrator is primarily used for vectors. So um I don't know, think logos, right? Something like a logo, something that you want to stretch infinitely without it pixelating. That is what Illustrator is most useful for, that sort of style of illustration. Now, you don't have to do just logos in Illustrator, but that's primarily what it's used for, is for vector art. And your Photoshop, Clip Studio, Procreate are primarily used for raster images. So what we're doing now is creating a raster image, which means that what we're doing is pretty much painting pixels across the screen. Now I have my file set up to a certain resolution. I think in this case, it's like 600 dpi, is extremely large file. It doesn't necessarily have to be that big, but because I would like to at some point create canvas prints, because I do have canvas prints for some of the items or images I've created. At some point, I would like to blow this up to an extent without it pixelating. It is great to use a high resolution to do that. But at a certain point, it will pixelate, right? So when I'm setting up my files for digital illustrations, whether I'm doing a commission or anything like that, I do tend to work at an extremely high resolution so that when I shrink it, so that if I blow it up or whatever I decide to do with it, or whatever my client is paying me to do with it, right, you get a high quality, crisp image. With vectors, you don't have to worry about that as much, because it doesn't really matter how you scale it, it doesn't pixelate, right? So long as it is something like a um, EPS and SVG, those file formats, those types of things will not depreciate as they get bigger, right? Something like this particular illustration and others will, right? So, in other words, they'll degrade, they will pixelate, they won't look as good or as sharp or as crisp as something like a vector, right? So, your Clip Studio is a vector, not a vector, your Clip Studio is primarily a raster program. Photoshop is a raster program. Procreate is a raster program. However, in Clip Studio, you actually have the ability to work in vectors, which I think is really nice. Now, I have not spent a whole lot of time working in vectors in Clip Studio Paint. I have I prefer to do that in Affinity Designer or a Adobe Illustrator. So that's where I'm most comfortable. But you do have the opportunity or sort of the ability to do that within Clip Studio Paint. So you have quite a well-rounded program when it comes to this particular program, right? Now, for me, I just use it primarily for illustration. From time to time, I think I have done an animation, like a small animation in Clip Studio. I know for sure I've done one in Photoshop. So if you guys are familiar with some of my art time lapse paintings, the beginning sort of intro animation was something that I actually did in Photoshop, right? You have the same capabilities in Clip Studio. All right, so what I've done is sort of laid in a lighter tone color for her face. I've laid in her eye color. I'm going to turn off my sketch, and I'm also going to turn off this light source map that I've created for myself. Just for the moment, I'm going to label it before I do, so that I don't so I don't lose it. It's this one. Yep. Okay, good. So I'm going to label this light source map. Then I'm just going to turn this off, and this allows me to sort of see what I've done so far, right? So we've had our sketch sort of in the way, giving us a guideline of where her eyes are, where her eyebrows are, where her mouth and all of that. And so by turning it off, I kind of have an idea of what needs to be filled in. So I'm going to turn it back on. But what I'm going to do, just so that it's not too much of a distraction, is I'm actually going to turn it back down, right? So to about 31%, so that I get a nice balance between being able to see the sketch and also being able to see what I'm drawing underneath. All right. So I do keep my sketches in the multiply blend mode. And the reason that I do that is because it does blend very nicely into whatever I'm drawing. So if I was to go back up here and let's say we change it to normal, it doesn't change much, right? But if I were to go to like an overlay, not much of a change, not too much. I like multiply. So let's see if it makes a difference if we turn it up. And we change our blend mode to something like a screen. Does that change anything? Yeah, so that changes just a little bit. If we go to something like color burn, that should remain pretty dark, right? So these blend modes just sort of allow it to blend into whatever is going on underneath it, so that you can kind of see it. But I do like multiply. It works well for me. I think hard light maybe might work. Multiply just does well, right? There's no wonky wonky bits while we draw on top. All right. So now that I have my sketch, and I don't know if you guys can see it, so I might turn it up just a bit so you all are able to see that as we draw along, just a little bit. We are going to use that as a basis for where things should go. As soon as I find my layer, there you go. All right. Yeah, so Clip Studio, I highly recommend it. I am using version 1 of Clip Studio. There are 4 versions of this application so far. I've seen some really nice upgrades for the 4th version, especially when it comes to the 3D models, which is something that we used in order to pose the characters for this picture. I did use the 3D models. From what I am gathering, what am I doing? From what I've been seeing is you can actually now create a puppet from your illustration that you've already done, right? So say for instance, I've done this and I like it, but I really don't like the angle of her hand. I can finish this illustration and I can actually add pivot points within it so that I can change and manipulate the drawing that I've already done. Now you can do something similar with like a mesh, but you can also, do it with the puppet. All right, so Draw Sketchbook says, art is a hobby of mine. I mostly draw in my sketchbook. I do have Procreate and Clip Studio Paint. Awesome. Yeah, man, listen, I would love to see your artwork. So if you would like to come on one day, Draw Sketchbook, or want to DM me and show me some of your art, I would love to see that. Yeah, Clip Studio is really awesome. I have heard awesome things about Procreate. I've only ever used Procreate to do sketches. That's the only reason I use Procreate. I do have it. One of these days, though, I've said that what I'll do is I want to give it a try, and I want to do like a full-on illustration in it. I just haven't given it that much time yet. But I have seen some beautiful illustrations in Procreate, and I know that's a lot of people's favorite app. I've never used Clip Studio on the iPad though, so I'm really, really curious to know if there are certain limitations with it. So maybe I'll look into that as well. But yeah, I would love to see your artwork. I used to, actually was just looking at one of my old sketchbooks. I don't keep up with them as much as I used to. Most of the sketching now, like I said, pretty much happens either in Procreate or it happens in like Clip Studio or something like that. Or I'm doodling on like these index cards, which I have a stack of on my desk. I'll do that. But yeah, man, those are really great options. And I have, like I said, I said I want to challenge myself. The only reason I don't use Procreate as much as I think I probably could is that for me, it is a learning curve that has been difficult. I don't know what it is. I guess it's the gestures or what. And two, because there's an iPad app, you're limited, because of the mode of technology that you're on. You're limited in a certain way, but that could be fun to work with. I don't know, but I did say that one of these days I was going to challenge myself to do a full on illustration in Procreate and see how it goes. And maybe I'll make a video of it and let you guys know how it goes, because I do want to give it a try. Like I said, I've seen lots and lots of really, really cool artwork come out of it, stuff that I admire. And I really, really like, even though I know this is a sort of a taboo subject for a lot of people, I really like how it mimics traditional mediums. Like I've seen some really, really nice textures and things like that. So Draw Sketchbook says, I'm still learning how to use them. Listen, I'm with you, especially when it comes to that Procreate. But I like Clip Studio. Like I said, I think if you have, I don't know, for me, it was a pretty easy learning curve because I was coming from Photoshop. But I do like it. I like the ability to have a gajillion layers to it. I like the ability to be able to mix the vectors with the raster images. It's just really easy. For the most part, it's straightforward. There is still, of course, a learning curve, especially if you are used to certain programming, because shortcuts is sort of like the way of life when it comes to digital work, which is the trouble that I have with Procreate. It sort of cuts down on having to go through your menu items and do special selections and things like that. So for instance, you guys may notice on the screen that that the eyedropper tool might pop up, and then I'll go back into painting. I'm actively on my keyboard hitting the Alt key, and that allows me to sort of pick up colors as I go. So that sort of thing is super handy. It does take a little bit of getting used to. I had a guy ask me recently if switching to Clip Studio made me faster than working in Photoshop. I don't think so. I think that it's just a matter of practice, right? Everything takes practice. Your speed sort of comes along with the way that you work or how often you use a certain program. It's sort of just, it's a part of the process, right? But I do enjoy it. I do. I highly recommend, not Procreate. I highly recommend Clip Studio. I enjoy it. A lot of the peers that I have sort of was using it, and that's what got me interested in it. And yeah, I like it. So I draw on a Huion tablet. This one is a screen display. This is the second screen display that I've owned. The first one I had was a XP Pen. I liked it really well. This was when XP Pen first came out, so the quality wasn't great, right? But it got me through. That one actually came with like a screen protector, and so to get that paper like texture, you had to use the screen protector. With the Huion, it actually has that sort of built into the glass. So as I'm drawing across the glass, it sort of has that nice buttery way of drawing. I'm gonna see if you guys can hear it. I'm gonna move the mic. See if you guys can sort of hear this. I don't know if you can hear that, but it has a really nice surface to it, right? So I know a lot of times people have a little bit of trouble sort of making that transition into digital art because the glass is so slick. But what I do like about this particular model, the Huion 4K 24, I think 24 4K, is that it has that nice sort of rough surface, right? All right, so what I've done so far is just sort of cleaning up her face and just sort of moving color around, light and shadow, until it feels right to me, right? I'm not necessarily using a reference for her. I'm just sort of, using my memory as a guide for how the form of the face is. If you guys are interested in drawing faces, there is an app that I highly recommend doing just for study. If you want to learn about, sort of where planes of the face exist, it's called Handy. Now, I do have an Android phone, so I'm pretty sure this is available on Apple as well, iPhone as well. But Handy is such a nice app because it allows you to pose not only faces but hands and feet as well as props, right? So it looks something like this. Let me see if I can get the camera to focus on it just a bit. Not on me, friend. There you go. There it is. So this is Handy, right? So within Handy, you have hands and feet, you have faces, you have props, and then if you decide that you like how you've posed something and you can sort of save a scene, it'll save it for you. But I like this because if you are studying heads, for example, you have a couple of different options. So this is like a plain head, so that you have sort of the angles of the face. And so I'm just sort of using my own experience and memory and stuff like that to lay out the planes in our character's face. But it sort of looks like this, right? You also have the option to we don't want to save that. Discard scene, yes. You also have the option of changing sort of the ethnicity of the faces, as well as the age. There's an elder on here as well. And then you can use the skeleton as well. So if you are really, really wanting to study sort of where things line up on the face, this is a really, really handy app that I highly recommend. And I use it all the time. I think I used it for the mother character of this particular picture, because for whatever reason I was having trouble with the side profile. And I've done a side profile I don't know how many times, but for whatever reason that day, and it may have been just the pressure of being live, but I had trouble with it. So all I did was opened up Handy and sort of moved the face to where I needed to be, and it helps out a lot, right? But as I'm sort of laying out the lights and shadow of my character, I'm sort of keeping all of that in mind, remembering that our lips sort of stand out from our face, right? So there is a shadow that helps that appear to stand out. Same with our nose, there's going to be a shadow here. Now, because the light is sort of hitting her in an upward position, I have to kind of keep that in mind as I'm planning out where her light and shadow is going to hit her face. But that's all we're doing right now. Nothing super duper fancy, just sort of laying out the basis of where things are going. And then we can tighten it up a little bit later. So, like in her eyes, just sort of laying out her eyes. Now, depending on where I put the highlight of her eye, that'll sort of tell us where she's looking, right? So right now, just kind of looks like she's looking out, right? Maybe she's looking at her mom. She could be. Wherever we place her, sort of the highlight in her eyes, same with the grandmother, wherever we place the highlight of her eyes will sort of point us in the direction of where she's looking. I kind of want them to center around the little girl, but we'll kind of see, we'll play with it. I'm not going to spend too much time worrying about that part. But like I said, that's pretty much what we're doing, right? All right, so in this, let's see, we can also take the same highlight color, because we know that the light is going to reach up, and we do want to give a little bit of difference between her trap muscle and her biceps. So we're just going to lay it in just lightly, and we'll sort of blend this out a bit with our smudge tool. And I'm just using the smudge because it has a little bit of texture, as opposed to a blur tool, which will make this extremely soft. To me, I kind of like having a little bit of texture, and I can soften it up just by sort of going back and forth a little bit between colors and picking up those in between colors that we create, and giving her arm a little more form. Oh, not so much. Something like this. And this is sort of how we are going to approach it, right? And again, all of this can be tightened up a little bit later, but we do want to give ourselves a little bit of a foundation, right? Now, because we've laid in this sort of shadow, we don't necessarily have to add too much of a light color, because we're sort of emphasizing the fact that our little sister is glowing a bit, right? And so that dark, deep shadow will sort of create that illusion for us. Now, again, I want her glow. I don't know why. But I want her glow to be a hot pink color. I don't know why. I'm seeing like I said, the last dragon. His of course was red, but I want hers to be hot pink. I don't know why. I don't know if it's going to work, but we'll sort of get to her soon. If I don't finish up our sister this week, we'll probably get to her in the next couple of weeks or so, as we make our way around this image. But I do want that to be the case. So this should be fun. It'll be quite glowy, very much in line with the rest of the cards, which, while it's auto saving, I'll show you guys sort of what the rest of the cards look like. And we do this every week just in case we have some new faces here. I don't know if there it is. Did it come up? There it is. Hopefully it'll play here soon. There it is. Okay. So this is these are the cards from the previous cards. I don't know if it's showing up. Is it showing up for you guys? Let me go back. I'm gonna go back and we'll try it again. There we go. There it is. Okay. So these are the cards from Cosmic Gateways Tarot. So far, I think I clocked 35 or 6. I forget, one of the two that we've completed since 2019. My goal is to have all of the illustrations done by the end of the year. So that means that I'm, doing double duty, right? So we'll have a card that we focus on during our Sunday live streams. But for the most part, we'll probably definitely be making some cards or working on some illustrations throughout the week. And I'll just kind of fill you in as those progress and show you guys through social media and maybe show you guys during the live streams what those look like. But yeah, we've done quite a bit. Actually, again, I know I said this last week. I need to update that video so that it has all of the new additions that we've done over the last couple months added to that particular presentation. But yeah, we're doing good. I'm really, really, really excited to see this thing printed. I, from time to time, will actually take a moment to print out test cards. Generally, when I do like the canvas prints and I have those made, or I do like the poster prints, which I do offer on my shop, I love seeing them in you guys' homes, right? So sometimes I'll get DMs from people who have purchased prints and canvas prints, and I just love the fact that you all are resonating with this so much. It means a lot to me because, again, this was sort of a leap of faith that I had to take for myself. It was one of those things where I just felt like I needed to do it, and I just went on and did it. So now what I just did was grab a blend tool, right? So it has a much softer blend than our smudge brush. And then if I want to add that texture back in, if I don't want it to be as soft, meaning the blending, then I can just come back and add smudge such as that, just like so. All right, so let's give her a lip color. I think I'm going to match her outfit just a bit, maybe a little bit darker. And we're just going to plug this in like so, following the outline of our sketch. And then we might add in her teeth. And they're not going to be like pearly white or anything like that because of the darkness in the scene. So we do want to take that into consideration, because if I were to go all the way up, let me show you guys what I mean. So I know a couple of streams ago, we talked about the whites of the eyes not necessarily being white. If you guys have noticed that I painted the whites of her eyes gray, right? If I were to go in and make her teeth extremely white, make her eyes extremely white. Actually, you know what? Let me do this on a different layer so you guys can see. So let's say, because in my mind, I think that the eyes are white. Let's experiment and show you what that looks like, right? So let's plug in this extremely white eye color, right? And we can plug in the extremely white teeth, or the indication of teeth. If I were to zoom out, that's extremely distracting, right? So my focus is going to go to probably the brightest thing on the screen. Whereas if I were to make it darker, and maybe this is too dark, can go a little bit lighter. It doesn't cause a distraction in the image, and we get a lot more harmony going on in the image. So you don't want to make your eyes and your teeth and things like that extremely white. It's not necessary. It is going to look it's going to look a little strange, right? But what I am noticing is that maybe this gray is a little bit too dark, so we can go a little bit lighter, right? Maybe we'll use that darker color as a shadow color, and we'll plug this lighter color in like so, right? But we want to take into consideration that this is a nighttime scene, right? So things aren't going to be as stark white as they would be if this were a daytime scene. Now, because I know that I just kind of threw that in there, what I'm going to do is zoom in as soon as it stops, and we're going to clean that up a bit. Like so. And maybe she has her mouth somewhat open. Right? We can get in as close as possible. Now, this is why working on a very high resolution is handy, right? Because by doing so, I can get in here really, really nice and close and it doesn't necessarily get pixelated as quickly. And then as I blow this up, so for instance, if I make this particular image a canvas print, and I think I print up to a 30 by 40, which is a pretty good size print, it won't pixelate, right? So that is sort of the difference between your vectors and your raster images. Now, if I were to zoom in a little bit more, by pixels, this is what I mean, right? So these little bitty squares, those are pixels. All right. So I work at a extremely high DPI, that's dots per inch, or so that as you zoom in, you can get pretty good quality, crisp lines, right? And again, if I were to blow it up, it doesn't degrade as quickly as it would be if I were working on like 72 DPI or something like that. Now, for posting, if you are creating an image, for instance, this one is at 600. If I were going to post this image online, I would not post it at full strength 600 DPI. Because it's so big, I can actually afford to take it on down to a 72 or something like that, so that it shows up nice and crisp on the phone without giving away too much information, but you still get a decent quality image. So that's just sort of a crash course on image resolution and the difference between that and a vector image. So one of these days, maybe I will show you guys what some vector illustrations look like in terms of what they're made of. So where this is made up of those little squares, those pixels, your vectors are going to be made up of shapes, right? So for you guys who have seen the witches coven series that I've done, where we have the pink one that glows, sort of the monk character, and we have the little girl who's with her science book, all of those are actually vector images. So they're actually made up of shapes and lines, right? So it's a little bit different than laying down these squares and pixels that we're laying down in this particular case. Well, we are going to give her a little bit of a shadow in her eyes. I don't know where I'm going to establish her pupils just yet, and it may not even be important. So we're not going to worry too much about that. But we'll do something like so, and then we'll tighten up her nose, right? And so zooming in and out of your image sort of helps you do that as well. Now again, we're going to have some light hit the bottom of her nose, because our little girl, we'll turn that back on just so we can see our light map. It'll sort of hit her up here, right? So the bottom of her nose rather than under her nose is going to be in shadow or in light. And then we'll go from there. So this may be a pretty short live stream today. I just want to show you guys how I establish faces, especially if I am making up a face, right? So if I'm not necessarily following a reference for a face. Oh, actually, you know what? What I would like to do, I believe, since we have a slight blue background, is I kind of want to use a little bit in her skin. Not a lot, just enough to add the atmosphere to it. Oh, not the eraser. And this is something that I actually did in our Queen of Wands, right? So if I want to mix a color into the skin tone, what I'll do is sort of pick up the background color and I'll actually add it into the elements of the image. And that way our people don't necessarily sit against the background, but they become part of the atmosphere. So that's one of the tricks that I do to ensure that that happens as well. All right, so something like this. We'll add a little bit of that blue, and we'll actually add a little bit of the bounce light from the little girl once we establish what that light is going to look like. But we'll turn off this light source map. like so. We'll add just a little bit of that blue in. And it's looking like she needs a little bit of shadow here just to help her mouth stand out a bit. Something like that. All right. So I think today we're going to call this a super short stream. It's only been 46 minutes. Typically we go for about an hour, but what I'm going to do, because what I can feel myself doing is going really quiet just to concentrate on this. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and continue to work on our maiden's skin so that next week we'll probably work on her costume, and I'll show you guys how I sort of create, again, how I do the folds and things like that in her clothes. If not, we have two more characters that we have to capture. So if you're watching this live or if you're watching the replay, I really, really appreciate you for being here. I was a little bit discombobulated today because, again, I had came straight through the door right on this live stream. So I do appreciate you guys for stopping by. Thank you so much. Shout out to Draw Sketchbook. And I do want to see your artwork. So be sure to DM me because I would love to see your artwork. So shout out to you, Draw Sketchbook. Thank you so much for joining me. Shout out to UPL. I really, really appreciate you, as always, both of you guys, for stopping by the chat. If I missed you guys in the chat, make sure you say hey to me in the comments below. If there's something that you guys would like to see on this live stream, please let me know. Until next week, we're going to call it a short stream. Thank you so much again. We'll see you again. See you later.